especially when you use micellar water, how much more dirtier your face is. Or some people just use toners because that does the same thing. Alright, so you see how nice and sculpted her face is now? I also like to do it into the inner corners and then down the nose. Why? Because it looks like a shadow. It looks like it's supposed to be a part of where the light naturally hits and does not hit her face. So anywhere that hollows on the face that's not a high point will automatically look like a shadow. Just put a little more product, but you see I'm not using too much of it either. You can use a smaller brush for this. In case you don't feel very confident and you're afraid you put too much of the product there. Again, wipe and clean the brush from any excess product as much as possible. And go back in and blend. Because you want it seamless. You don't want to see where it starts, where it ends. And you don't want to take it too far in as well, because you're just going to ruin all the concealer work that you did. And if you feel like I want to make the nose bridge just pop a little bit more, that's fine as well. You notice this kind of tapers to like a rounded point. It's good to use brushes like that, especially if you're going to do a nose highlight with the concealer. And gently turn sideways so they can see how I'm doing it. I'm not pressing at all. I am just running the tip of the brush down the nose bridge so that she has that appearance. And you want it to just get a little wider till it reaches the brows. Remember, this is all part of manipulation with light. So if you put too much concealer, you're going to widen the nose bridge and make the nose look bigger. If you put a tiny amount just down the center, then you're going to give more of an appearance. And you're just blending the edges back in. Right? Now I like to use, you can use blush directly over this. Why? Because you don't want to put too much powder. So what too much powder is going to do is make the face look very dry, very cakey. You're going to lose the luminosity from the natural skin tone. And if you put the blush just over this area, it's going to help to maintain the luminosity and the skin-like finish. I used to rarely use too much powder, too much foundation powder all over the face, and then go in with loose powder, and then go in with highlight. Too many layers is a no-go. So you're going to want to, I sometimes use a cream or liquid blush or powder, but I'll do both. Right. You can use a nice small, soft, tapered brush as well. I'm going to apply it both ways so you see. And then smile. So you want to do it on the apples of the cheek. It's almost going to marry the contour into the blush. And then you can gently blend. I like blending it to the temples because it gives a nice rosy look. And I like blushes that are corally or peachy for warm undertones. For darker undertones, I do like nice warm, it almost looks like cinnamon. Kind of warm, kind of browny red tones because it shows better on and complements a dark skin tone. But any tan tone as well. Some corals do. You can even use a darker coral on a darker skin tone. Fenty Beauty just came out with a really beautiful one that looks good for any skin tone, and it depends on the opacity. So if you use it a little more heavy-handed on a dark skin tone, it will look beautiful. And if you use it just a little more gently on a lighter skin tone, it will still look nice. It just all depends on how much product you use, and like I said, less is more with building. Now we are looking nice, we're looking vibrant, gently blending it. So it looks nice on the skin, it's nice and blended. And you can't see anywhere where it starts and ends. Very luminous and nice. And now I'm going to show you how to set makeup. So you can still use a powdered blush very gently. So you can knock off the excess. And you can just go over gently these areas. So it still maintains some nice glow to the skin. But it's setting it. It's not shiny anymore, it's just gluey. And you notice I did not use a whole lot either. I literally just did this. So you just see nice tone. It's not gonna look red throughout the whole thing, or orange or peachy. I'm going to show you how everything is going to come together. So I'm going to go back in with a nice clean duo fiber brush. This brush. Clean is important, because I'm going to show you my trick to keeping your foundation from creasing. You're going to use a loose powder. I'm using a tinted one in Banana because it has a nice yellow undertone. Or you can use a translucent one that looks like it goes on and you don't see it, it's seamless. And then what I'm going to do, I'm using another very small, fine brush, look up. So sometimes makeup will tend to settle a little bit in these areas. You're going to want to blend it away very gently. To reduce any creasing before you set it, now I'm going to set it with the loose powder. Some people like using sponges, but my thing with sponges, it definitely does help it to look seamless. But I like traditional because I have more control, I find, with the brush. And if I need to use a beauty blender or a sponge after, I'll go over it and it will just look really, really flawless. But it's not necessary, I feel like, because I still get a really nice finish. And I find with the brush too, I can get every crease. And I like pressing it because just like a beauty blender, you're bouncing the product into the skin. And that's why you get it to look so flawless and why it stays. And I don't like that baking technique so much because when you leave too much product there for a long period of time, I find it tends to really, unless you have oily skin, but if you have dry skin, it's not going to be very forgiving at all. It's just going to show every wrinkle you didn't even know you had. So any areas really that I feel like may crease or may shine through, I'm going to set with loose translucent powder. And you see how I'm really concentrating it in this area. I'm just patting back and forth very gently. Just gonna get a little more product. I'm only keeping it in the center of the forehead because I just want this area here to reduce the shine. I'm just kind of lightly dusting away any excess. And now we're going to just go down the nose bridge and set. And if you have smile lines, go down the smile line as well. This Pro Filter powder actually does also have a blurring effect on the skin, so it does make you look even more flawless. Right, so you see how we manipulated. We kept these areas matte and still managed to maintain glow in the skin. So we're just gonna finish, and yes, you already cream contoured. You can still add a little bronzer just to set the cream contour or liquid contour so that it really holds everything in place, especially these days being super hot. I'm just gonna use this bronzer here. Okay. So I'm going really just below the apples of the cheek, which would be the hollows of the cheek, to give us that contoured look. And just at the hairline and temples, to warm it up. This really helps to start to shape the face. So you see how everything is just kind of coming together. I don't like to put too much on the nose, but right at this area here. I like just putting a little there. And now we're just gonna gently set the rest of the face with powder in the areas that we wouldn't have touched with a nice big fluffy powder brush. And you're gonna want, I actually like using MAC powder still because I find it just works. I'm gonna go on NC43 because it does match her really well. You want to evenly get the powder on the brush. I like to tap off excess because you don't need all of that. And you're just gonna gently go over the face. It always looks best when you have so she will still have a glow, a natural skin tone glow. I'm going to now take it gently down the neck to set this area as well so it doesn't look unfinished. Blending away below the contour line so everything just looks nice and blended. So you see, skin is already looking really great. We're just going to finish off the skin with a little highlight. You can use a fan brush or the same duo fiber, a very small bristled brush. Tap off excess. And you're gonna want one second.
That I'm here typing and holding this.
Okay. Want to the high point of the cheekbone is your actual cheekbone. If you press your finger against it, you're going to feel the bone there. You're literally applying the highlight to this area because that's where the light naturally hits and reflects off of the face. It's the highest point of the cheek. So the apples of the cheek, smile, is this nice chunky fat part here. And the cheekbone goes right above. So that's how you really apply your highlighter, your blush on the cheeks itself, the apples of the cheeks, and your contour is the hollow below your cheek. You can apply, I don't like putting too much on the nose, the tip of the nose, but I like putting just right at this part here in the nose bridge. I used to put highlight all down the nose, but I don't do that anymore. For the eyes, now her brows are already pretty clean, so she won't need to carve out, but if I ever use concealer, I just rather carve out. I'll just do it anyways just to demonstrate before I move on. I prefer to carve out below the brow rather than on top with concealer because it doesn't look as natural. So you brush through the brows just to make sure you can see everything clearly. And you're going to use a flat concealer brush to carve out the brows. And I actually prefer to use a concealer that's not too very much lighter than the skin, because I just find it looks a lot better. Blend it. All the way. So you don't see a line. I like blending it down into the lid. I like using a little bit of the same highlight I use on the cheekbones, just at the brow bone, right there. So I'm gonna wipe off the excess and I'm gonna go back in and blend, especially if you're doing like a nice natural makeup look. And you're gonna wanna blend it as much as possible so you don't really see where it starts and ends. Okay, so now for the eyes, you're going to want to use neutral tones. Not neutral, but I like using warm tones in the crease. So the crease of the eye is the socket of the eye. Open. Look straight ahead. The socket of the eye is where the eye naturally folds and creases. Look up at the ceiling. So you see that right here is called the eye socket. And that's where you're going to want to apply any tone like this. A nice warm tone is always nice to use as a transition tone. And what a transition tone is, which would be any tone like these warm tones here. So I feel like it's always good to start with the lighter tone and then work your way up. Layers are always nice because it looks more blended. I'm going to start with this tone here in the crease. And you want a nice soft brush for blending. I like to dust off my excess and go back in and blend more. Because if you don't do that, you're just going to spread the shade all over, and you want it more concentrated in the crease. Open, so that you get that nice effect. It starts to carve out the shape of the eye. Going back in again. And open. You want to get in this area here. Close. So you want to get in the crease of the eye. Clean off the excess. And small circular motion. So very small motions like that. Again, it's the wrist movement. You're just going faster and in tinier little motions and very light-handed, because again, you press and you're going to put all that brown in this area and it won't move. Okay. So now we're going to build up. So I think I would have built up this side a little more. I'm going to build up this side a little bit to make it even. So it's good to step back sometimes and look in the mirror and make sure both sides are evenly blended, because it's just going to look, not going to look nice in photos or anything. And for people who have monolids, meaning like you have no eyelid space or it's very, very small, keep the tones as close as possible to the lash line and then blend your way up. But she has a lot of lid space, so we can do a lot of blending in the eye sockets. Otherwise, if you have very tiny eye space, start blending from the lash line and work your way up. Right, you can leave it just like this and just keep a really simple tone on the lid if you're not trying to go too crazy. Or you can take a little bit of this darker brown here on the tip of your brush and just do the outer corners into the lash line. The reason I tap is because I want to get rid of the excess, or else it's going to fall out on your face. So you want to make sure you tap as much as possible off your bristles. And you can go in as close to the lash line as possible because it's going to also help give you a nice smoky look. Open. So you see how it's already starting to take shape. I put more on the tip of my bristle and I'm patting off the excess now. And now we're going to do the same thing on this side. As close as possible to the lash line and the outer corners. Less is more, like I said, so work in layers. Add more if you feel like you need more, but don't add too much dark all at once because they can't take it off. You're going to have to start over. Open. Now I'm just going to add a tone to the lid. I feel like I want to keep it really neutral and simple. So I'm going to use this tone here. Some colors apply best with the fingers. I'm just going to pat that on the lid. Color. Look a little more seamless. You'll hear me using that word seamless a lot because that's exactly what you want in your makeup application. Seamless. Just applying a little more color. And going back in with the brush. Right. We are looking real fabulous, y'all. I was gonna use gel liner, but I figured I'm gonna use a pencil. This is, I think, Infallible L'Oreal. And you want to sharpen it, always keep it sharp. I'm just gonna sanitize this. So you always want it to have a point when you're doing liner. And you go in as closely as possible to the lash line. This liner you can get in the drugstores at Superfarm or the dreaded Starlight. Open. And you see how it's giving her a nice dark finish. You want to pull the lid up a bit so that you can get as close as possible to the lash line. Open. So you see how that already kind of makes the look a little more sultry. And And I like going in a gradient. So I like to keep it really thin on the inner and then get thicker on the outer open, because it just gives you more of like a feline look, which is a really popular eye shape and trend lately. I mean, it always has been the almond eye look has always been the most popular. And you see what I did there? I took my finger just at the tip and I dragged it open so that you get a nice soft wing. Effortless. So again, I'm going to sharpen it because it's now a little dull.